Hi, everyone. This is Kevin Deckinga with the League of American Bicyclists. Thanks so much for coming to our webinar this evening. We've still got a bunch of people trickling in. I'm seeing one every couple seconds or so. So I'm going to mute myself and wait for just a few minutes, and we'll go from there. So now's the time to get a glass of water, anything that you need. We'll be back shortly. All right, with that, I think we will start. We've broken the 100 attendees threshold, so go team. Before I start rambling off, I'm wondering if you could raise your hand if you can hear me. Looking up, there we go. Got a couple hands raised. Thank you. Awesome. So I'm Kevin Deckinga. I am Director of Membership and Development here at the League of American Bicyclists. Thanks so much for coming to our webinar this evening. I'm joined by Gina Doyle and the rest of her team over at American Specialty Insurance. Say hi, Gina. Can you do that?
Hello.
Hello. The League has been working with American Specialty Insurance for over 25 years on our bike club and advocacy organization insurance program, and we're just so thrilled to be working with them. Any of you who have had the pleasure of speaking with Gina or Renee or anyone on staff know that they are just so great to work with. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I will start with a few slides about your league membership and kind of what we have going on at the league right now. You know, the government might be shut down, but Congress is in session, and yeah, we are full steam ahead. So let me move forward. Here we go. And if you can see my screen, if I can get anyone to raise their hand, that would be great. Yes, awesome, thank you. All right, first of all, first things first, the League of American Bicyclists, wheelmen, quote unquote, we're a member-supported organization, as you know. We've been around since 1880. We wouldn't be here without the support of bike clubs, advocacy groups, and of course, individual members. We are the big tent organization by and for bike advocates, and that includes you. So thank you for your support. We really can't say it enough. Right now, we have about 370 member advocacy organizations and 575 member bike clubs. I shouldn't say about, that's exactly what we have. So thank you so much for being here. Yeah, it's an impressive number. I mean, you think about all the people that are involved in this greater bike movement. That's you. And you're all here because you're members of the league, or maybe you're considering becoming an organizational member of the league. Tonight, what we're talking about is our flagship membership benefit for clubs and advocacy groups, your ability to buy into our group insurance policy. If you're not sure about your membership status, visit our renewal page. It's bikeleague.org/renew. If you plug in your name or other identifying factors, you'll be able to see if you are in fact a member or not. And it's an easy 2-click renewal process. So super, super easy. If that doesn't work, you can always contact me, kevin@bikeleague.org, with questions. I am almost always here. Okay. A little bit about what we have going on in the league. It, again, is your membership contribution that keeps us moving forward. Federal advocacy, like I said, the federal government is shut down, Congress is in session. We are working with the Congressional Bike Caucus, and we are informing members of Congress. 2019 is a big year. The new transportation bill will be rewritten and negotiated this year. We are building coalitions on Capitol Hill with other like groups, organizations like Transportation for America, National Safe Routes to School Partnership, and many, many, many more here in DC. And we're mobilizing advocates from across the country using our online activism tool, Phone to Action. And I'll probably talk a little bit more about that too. Our biggest program, of course, is Bicycle Friendly America. You're probably familiar with Bicycle Friendly Community, University, Business. We're working with those entities to deliver custom recommendations and guideposts necessary to build better places to ride. In smart cycling, I know many of you are league cycling instructors. We're currently licensing and training and ensuring 500 new LCIs every year who turn around and empower tens of thousands of adults and kids with the ability to ride every day. The National Bike Summit, I'm going to talk about that in just a moment, but of course this year we'll also have the National Bike Challenge, Bike Month, and much, much more. All right, here is your personal formal invitation to the National Bike Summit. It's just 8 weeks away. Like I said, the transportation bill will be a very big deal in 2019. And we need all of the bike advocates and elected officials and industry leaders and bike clubs that we can. We need your presence in DC. It will be a pivotal year. So learn from plenaries, speakers, mobile workshops, happy hours. We're also hosting again this year the Active Transportation Leadership Retreat on Saturday. So if you are in the bike club or advocacy org world, learn from your peers across the US. Lots of great conversations at the leadership retreat every year. And you can register right now at bikeleague.org/summit. I get asked this all the time, so I figure this is probably a good venue for me to talk about it a little bit more. What are the benefits, membership benefits of being a member advocacy organization or bike club? Well, first of all, you're here. It's a group insurance. Our group insurance policy covers the majority of bike clubs and advocacy groups in the country. We're also happy to offer discounted individual memberships. If you're interested, please reach out to me. We want to get your club members involved in advocacy at the national level. And a great way to start is to count them as members. Your organization is also listed in our national directory. We have a brand new learning management tool coming later this year. It's a retooled, I should say, Bike League hub. So if any of you are using the hub, watch for brand new redesign coming very soon. You also have discounted registration at the National Bike Summit. We're having our January special right now. Individual registration for the National Bike Summit is on the upswing. We're having a really good year, and that really just builds upon itself. The League would also love to offer you personalized online advocacy campaigns through phone to action. We can drill down to the state legislature as well as the city council level. So if there's something that you want changed in your community and it is the work of local legislatures, let's talk. And then finally, I want to know what else. We have a survey at the end of this webinar. You'll also get an email to you later. Please fill it out. I want to talk mutual aid calls, topics for future webinars, any other tangible benefits you want to see. I want to hear from you because I want this tool to be well used. I want this to really move the dial. Advocacy organizations, especially the biking and walking benchmarking report is here. Yay. It just landed in the last couple weeks. It's available digitally, or you can order a print version, actually, bikeleague.org/benchmarking report. Finally, here's my contact info one more time. You can also reach out to Renee Watterson with American Specialty Insurance or Gina Doyle. Yeah, again, thanks so much for being here. I'm about to hand over the reins to our friends at American Specialty. One more thing, we will likely save all questions for the end. If you have a question, please share those in the chat box. And I'll kind of delegate those a little bit and we'll see where we go from there. So that said, let's see if I can hand over the reins.
Okay, thank you.
I can do it, I promise. Here we go.
Let me just. Were we successful?
Well, I see your screen. If you can see Gina's screen, please raise your hand. Yep, a few of you. Great, awesome. Yeah, take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kevin. It certainly sounds like a really exciting time to be a member club of the League. So lots of fun things happening and exciting things. And as we have mentioned, American Specialty is, hang on, I'm getting some background noise. So I'm going to see if I can fix this.
Okay, I'm not hearing it, but.
I don't think that'll work. Okay, so, all right, I don't hear it now, so sorry about that. But American Specialty is certainly excited to continue our partnership with the League. And much like Kevin shared lots of good news, we have what we feel is some really good news for the insurance renewal this year. For those of you who do not recognize my voice, I'm Gina Doyle. I'm here with Renee Watterson, which many of you have probably talked to for a number of years. Renee has been here for a lot of years, we'll just say that. And we're joined by our wonderful team, Rochelle Tomes and Nicole Wolf, who you might not have talked to yet, but certainly a possibility, and work behind the scenes on the League insurance program quite a bit. So with that, we can go ahead and get started. We're going to talk a little bit about the reasons that we have the club insurance program, talk a little bit about the terminology that we're going to be using, and then we'll get into the details of what coverages apply when. So we'll go ahead and jump right in. And as Kevin said, feel free to ask questions, and we will leave them for the end, or if it is appropriate and a good stopping point, we might go ahead and address those here. A couple of things. We like to start with the benefits of the League Insurance Program. The League Insurance Program is really a customized insurance program that's really unique to the needs of a bicycle club. We know that bad things can happen regardless of whether or not it's on your weekly donut ride or during your club's biggest fundraising ride, which is the reason that everyone obviously is most concerned about insurance coverage. So we want to make sure that your club is protected. The League has done a really nice job of developing and holding our feet to the fire to make sure that we're keeping up with the many initiatives that the League and its clubs have on an annual basis. So we'll get into some of the specifics there. Another benefit of the League Insurance Program is that like Kevin said, we've been working with the League for over 25 years, and several of our claims representatives or specialists who handle the League claims have also been working on the League's insurance claims for about that amount of time, or at least been in the industry for that period of time, which is really important because you don't want to become an organization that is a target for claims. You want to make sure that you are settling claims where there may be liability or we need to, but also defending those where there's an assumption of risk by the writer or anyone else involved, and not just being that target organization that continuously settles claims, because if that happens, none of us would be able to afford insurance for our ongoing activities. We have a custom-built insurance purchasing website with access to risk management resources and the ability to purchase your coverage online. You also have access to the American Specialty team in the event that the online platform is not really for you or not your preference, or you have questions about the coverage or how to secure proof of insurance. And that's where Renee and Nicole and Rochelle and I really come into play, just answering any question that you have. We receive a variety of questions and encourage you definitely to reach out to us with any questions that you have. One advantage of being part of a group insurance program is that you come to the table with group purchasing power. So it's easier for us as your insurance agent to negotiate on your behalf to secure the coverages that are really important to a bicycle club. With that, if you are a club who has unfortunately suffered a loss or a lawsuit, you not only know that it's very time consuming, but can be very expensive. And once you've suffered a loss, if you're out on your own and you're trying to secure coverage, it's a lot more difficult to secure coverage for your activities. But if you're part of this larger group organization and you can all come together and purchase collectively, but still have your own individual limits, that's a real advantage to the clubs. One thing we know in working with the League for 25 years and just being in this industry of sports and entertainment is that a claim or an incident or a crash or an accident that happens in one club or at one level of an organization is certainly, there's potential and exposure for it to happen again. We certainly want to make sure we're learning from incidents and things that happen, but a lot of times there are things that can't necessarily be avoided, and certainly depending on who is involved, there could be a lawsuit as a result. And then just the ongoing consistency in coverage. It's really helpful, I think, for an organization to know that year after year the coverage is the same, the coverage is going to be there, the limits are the same, and you have your own individual limits. So just a couple of benefits of the League Insurance Program that the League really works extremely hard to provide and negotiate and on your behalf. So we'd like to talk a little bit about who's eligible for the insurance program through the League. And it really is any nonprofit who is a current member of the League of American Bicyclists and whose primary purpose is to promote and organize bicycling activities. So you do not have to be incorporated or have a tax exempt status to be eligible for coverage. It's really that you have to be in the business of promoting bicycling activities and be a current member of the league. And Kevin shared with us earlier the website address. I tried to write it down, but I think it is www.bikeleague.org/renew.
Renew,
Is
yeah,
that right?
that's the one. Yep. And
Awesome.
a few requests on the chat box. If you can change the display settings on your screen to present. I believe it's under display settings, just to make the screen a little bit bigger, if you're able to do that.
I think maybe I have two screens. I think I might need to switch them around here.
Yes, yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. Yes, thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Yeah, no worries.
So we also have room in the insurance program for what we're referring to really here as untraditional clubs. But with anything that's a little untraditional, we have some requirements that have to be met. So the club, a club who participates or engages in mountain biking activities is eligible as long as that's not their primary purpose is mountain biking activities. And the same is true for randonneuring activities, with the exception of the activities that are unsupervised. So as long as it's a group ride, group activity, those types of exposures can certainly be considered under the league's insurance program. Just to make sure we're all on the same page relative to really bicycle, when I refer to bicycle clubs and advocacy organizations throughout tonight's session, I wanted to clarify that for insurance purposes, advocacy organizations are those clubs that have 26 or fewer club rides annually with an average of 50 or fewer riders for each ride. I know a lot of our bicycle clubs are also advocacy organizations, and that's a big part of what you do. But for insurance purposes, we're really separating it between advocacy organization that have 26 or fewer club rides, and then a bicycle club that would have more than 27 or more club rides. So when I say advocacy organization, I'm referring to the organization that has fewer rides and the bicycle club organization that has more club rides annually. The bicycle clubs and the advocacy organizations receive the same insurance coverage, but the premium is structured slightly different, where the advocacy organization pays a flat premium to join the insurance program, so it's not impacted by membership size, but where the bicycle club, that club again has 27 or more club rides annually, the premium is membership based, so there's a per member charge to become insured under the league's insurance program. And we did include just a fun fact, and this one is fun enough that I felt like I should bring it to the attention. I thought that I was pretty much aware of any insurance programs that are out there, but evidently there's an alien abduction insurance product that's been available. Maybe it's not readily available, but it's been available in the insurance marketplace since 1987. So if we don't learn anything else, we know that for a fact now. We're going to give a little program overview, and we're going to get into detail of each of these coverages. So I'm just going to quickly touch on the base program, which is the coverage that automatically applies if you join the league's insurance program, and that's the general liability coverage and the excess accident medical coverage. And then we have optional coverages that are purchased separately if they are of interest to you, which include the excess liability limits, and that increases the limit of liability for certain exposures. Directors and officers liability coverage, automobile liability coverage, property coverage, those are all optional coverages, and again, we'll talk about those. Currently, we do not have coverage available for workers' compensation or owned automobiles. So if your club owns an automobile, you would want to insure that locally through an agent, similar to what you would do for your personal auto coverage. And then our LCIs, Kevin mentioned, obviously, LCIs are a big part of the league. And as an LCI, you automatically receive general liability coverage for your individual education activities, as long as those educational activities are conducted in accordance with the league's guidelines for LCIs. So we'll get into the specifics on what each of these coverages are, who's covered, and when coverage applies. So general liability policy is designed to provide protection to the club itself, also your volunteers and employees, if you have employees, from third-party claims of bodily injury, property damage, and personal and advertising injury. An example of a bodily injury claim, which is where we see most of our claims for the league and also for many of our sports organizations, would be a cyclist who struck a person while the individual was walking on a trail. And the example of an actual claim would be that that individual is injured and brings suit against your member who is on your club ride, but also the club itself, and demanding some level of compensation. So that's an example of a bodily injury claim. Also, you could see, an individual situation where a cyclist fell due to poor road conditions or was struck by a vehicle. Property damage liability, an example of that would be a cyclist running into or striking a vehicle and causing damage to that vehicle. And then sports equipment liability is going to be a bicycle stolen from the club's bicycle corral, where the club was responsible for overseeing the protection of the bicycles during, let's say, for example, you run in for lunch. The general liability policy applies to all covered activities, and that includes your I guess this actually should say, I apologize, I wanted to read this a little bit more. Who is covered is probably what this should say, and the answer to that is the league, bicycle clubs, and advocacy organizations that have enrolled. As I said, the members and volunteers of those insured clubs, and then your directors, officers, employees of insured clubs are also covered. Now, when I talk about directors and officers being covered under the general liability policy, we have to remember that that only applies to those triggers under the policy. So the bodily injury claims, the property damage liability claims, or the personal and advertising injury claims. And then also it provides coverage for first-time invited guests, where, and we do recommend that a release of liability waiver is signed by those first-time invited guests. When coverage applies, which is what I was trying to jump to prematurely in the last slide, but it provides coverage for club rides. So those include recreational bicycle rides that are conducted and supervised by an insured club for which no fee is charged. So that's going to be your weekly ride where you all meet on, let's say, Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. You ride, for however many miles, and then at the end, you all kind of start and finish all at the same place. Not at the same place necessarily, but all together, start and finish together. For advocacy organizations, again, this is a reminder that this coverage only applies if you indicate when you purchase the coverage that you, as a club, do conduct your these social rides, if you will, and that you have fewer than the maximum allowed number of riders. And then there's also special events, which are recreational bicycle rides that are conducted and supervised, again, by an insured club, but where the club charges a participation fee. And so that might be a fundraiser, or it could just be a fee to cover the costs associated with organizing the ride. Either way, if a fee is being charged, the special event must be reported prior to the event, and then appropriate premium paid following an event. And it's important to remember, and we'll remind you again in the presentation, that you don't count your regular club members in your special event premium counts. So if you have 20 club members participating in this ride of 100 people, you would only report 80 because 20 of them you've already reported and contemplated coverage for them for your annual exposures. And then other bicycle-related activities like club meetings or fundraisers, time trials, bike education courses, and promoting safe routes to school programs and bike refurbishment, those types of things are also contemplated. There's a couple of them which you'll see as you go through the online purchasing website, where if you answer yes, it does generate an additional premium charge. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that we're not charging those who don't have those clubs that don't have that exposure for the exposure, but rather put that charge back on only if you have an exposure, which ultimately keeps everyone's premium as low as possible. The limit of liability is $1 million each occurrence. That means that this policy will never pay more than $1 million for any indemnity settlement. Defense costs are in addition to the limit of liability. So you could be in a situation where you have incurred $500,000 of defense costs, and then there's $1 million settlement. The policy will pay the defense costs plus the $1 million settlement because, again, the defense costs are in addition to the limit of liability. But an actual indemnity payment where you would just say to the individual who is suing your club or your club members or your directors and officers for a bodily injury claim, you wouldn't be able to settle that for more than $1 million and have coverage under the general liability policy. There is a $5 million general aggregate on the general liability policy, and that aggregate applies individually for each insured entity. So we have a large number of clubs insured under this program, and so what the $5 million each insured general aggregate does is make sure that if I have a bike club and Renee has a bike club, that she doesn't exhaust my limits. So everyone has their own separate general aggregate. And that is always should provide peace of mind, especially for a club insurance program. Additional limits are available. There's a couple of different options. The preferred option, so if you have a facility or a board or anyone who says you either are required to carry a $2 million limit, for example, or it's recommended that you carry a $2 million limit, you would purchase an additional $1 million through an excess liability policy. The preferred method for you would be to purchase that in the name of your club so that it only applies to you. In the event that you're not able to do that, either financially or for whatever other reason, the league has agreed to allow, in certain occurrences, the excess liability coverage to be provided under their blanket excess policy for a lower premium. But again, you're sharing that limit with not only the league, but any other club who's added coverage for themselves under the league's insurance program. So I would say that is a huge advantage. Kudos to the league for opening that up as an option, because many organizations would keep that coverage specific for their their entities' exposures. So again, it's not the preferred approach, but it is an example of a way that we can work through and provide the limits that you request or need. A couple of important items to know with respect to the general liability policy. Release of liability waivers, they're always recommended, not required unless you are participating in a mountain biking activity. In that case, release of liability waivers are required. Just by way of explanation, the advantage of a release of liability waiver is to have the writer, him or herself, assume responsibility for his or her actions and also acknowledge that the activity while we're doing and the league is doing and all of the clubs are doing through their advocacy work, so much work towards making cycling as safe as possible. Accidents or crashes still do happen. And a lot of times, depending on how serious the crash or accident is, and regardless of whether or not your club member wants to name the league club in a lawsuit, it a lot of times happens almost inadvertently. So as an example, you could have a situation where there's a pothole which causes the crash, and then your club member brings suit against the city, and then the city pulls the club in. So again, they may not intentionally try to name your club in a lawsuit. Sometimes they do. We've had plenty of those as an example as well. But you can certainly get wrapped up in litigation unintentionally. So the release liability waiver gives us something to talk about from a defensibility perspective, that the individual acknowledge that the activity itself does pose some level of risk and that the participant accepted that risk. Helmets are recommended from a risk management perspective, but only required for mountain biking activities. We do have and include in the club insurance program if you have a non-competitive walking component as part of your weekly rides or club activities. And then limited abuse and molestation coverage, and that's really designed to provide a defense up to a certain amount which is $25,000, to make sure that in the event that your club is named in a lawsuit as a result of an abuse and molestation allegation, that you have some level of defense to try to protect your club from that exposure. But in most cases, our clubs are not assuming responsibility for the care of minors, which helps reduce your exposure there greatly. A couple of additional items that we always want to point out. Mountain biking, we do like to call that out separately and just bring to your attention, if you're participating or your club is offering mountain biking activities, you'll recall that I said as long as it's not the club's primary purpose or primary activities that take place, and we really define that as about a third of the club's annual activities. If mountain biking represents more than a third of your annual activities, we should definitely talk, and let's just see what we can do to make sure that you have the appropriate coverage. So there is an additional premium associated with mountain biking activities. 52 club rides or less is an additional $116 per policy period. And like I said, helmets and release of liability waivers are required for mountain biking activities. And when we refer to mountain biking activities, we're referring to cross-country, trail rides, things like that, not the backcountry, traditional mountain biking exposures, or any tricks or timing type exposures that really fall outside of what we're trying to do here through the league's insurance program. And again, like I said, for those exposures that fall outside what we've talked about here, we recommend and encourage you to reach out to anyone on our team just so that we can talk through the best way to ensure that your club has the protection it needs. The policy is not designed to provide coverage for racing activities. There is the one carve out, Renee, relative to timing for time trials.
Yeah, time trials. Yes, it's you're I won't use the word competing, but personal best time. It's not best or competing against another individual. So It's just personal best.
Yeah. So if you're doing time trials or personal best timing, we don't consider that racing. It's the racing piece that we're more concerned about is a traditional bike race. For-profit tours, again, the policy is really designed to provide coverage for nonprofit organizations. Rentals or bike share programs really fall outside of the league's insurance program, or commercial, again, because we're looking at that nonprofit type exposure, but commercial bike or repair shops, year-round bike depot exposures, alcohol-related exposures. There's really a fine line when it comes to alcohol at fundraising activities on whether or not the traditional general liability policy, which we refer to when it comes to alcohol as host liquor liability, and a true liquor liability exposure exists. So we always recommend, if you're going to have alcohol at your event, that you reach out so that we can talk through, again, making sure that you have the right coverages in place. And then organizing or supervising a walking or biking school bus. Again, because we're not really in the business of assuming responsibility or care of minors. A couple of claims, just quick facts. We always like to share, and this continues to be true, that we don't have a lot of losses. When you really sit back and think about the number of rides that are taking place, there are probably rides taking place as we speak here this evening, but the number of rides taking place, the overall number of losses is fairly low, so low frequency. But the challenge continues to be that there's really high severity with these claims. In order for the individual, I guess traditionally or historically, to bring suit against the club, it has to be a pretty serious injury or, in some cases, fatality. And so we're seeing a lot of low frequency but high severity type claims. We usually see on average about 2 general liability claims each year. I've shared already a couple of these examples on the prior slide, but these are some of the high dollar claims that we've seen over the years, and just collision between cyclists or between a cyclist and a pedestrian, cyclist struck by a vehicle, or even in some cases a single bicycle crash. So property damage liability, like I said, an example of that again might be the damage to a bike that your club is responsible for supervising for a short period of time, or watching for a short period of time. And those have been fairly low over the years. So we don't see a lot of claims in that area. So far we've been talking about liability, that third-party liability exposure where the club is named in a lawsuit. But we also, the second piece of the league's insurance program is more of a first-party coverage for your individual members. And we refer to that as excess accident medical coverage. And it provides coverage for accidental injuries, including accidental death and dismemberment coverage. It's not an illness policy, so if you're on a bike ride and one of your club members suffers appendicitis, for example, this is not the policy that's going to respond. But if you are on that same ride and someone is injured and jams their finger and does suffer out-of-pocket expenses as a result, this policy is designed to help offset those out-of-pocket expenses. So a real benefit for your club members. Let's forgot to advance the slide. The policy provides coverage for the members of your insured clubs, as well as your first-time invited guests during club rides and time trials conducted and supervised by your club. For advocacy organizations, it's important to remember that this excess accident medical coverage only applies if you indicated that you are an advocacy organization that conducts rides, because there's a difference in premium there. So when you're going through the online insurance platform, we just encourage you to make sure that you answer those questions to the best of your ability. If something notable changes throughout the year, we encourage you to reach out to us so that we can again, make sure that you have the appropriate coverage. The excess accident medical policy also provides coverage to those registered participants and volunteers during a special event. So again, we have those participants who are not already members, and you're counting when you're scheduling your special event policy. And one of the reasons that you do that is because they now have access to the excess accident medical policy. And then all attendees of bicycle education courses that are conducted on bike have coverage. And again, that's assuming that the question on the online insurance renewal platform is answered properly. So the excess accident medical limit is $10,000 per person per accident. And again, that's not a limit that's designed to take care of someone who suffered a really, really serious injury as a result of participating in your club activity, but it's a good amount to help offset the out-of-pocket expenses. And that's true even as individuals take on higher deductible plans. The coverage is excess over any other valid collectible insurance. So your personal auto coverage is going to apply first, and coverage is also subject to a $500 deductible. The really great thing about the league's deductible is that it's considered a disappearing deductible, which means if you pay $500 under your primary insurer's policy as part of a deductible, you then do not have to turn around and pay an additional $500 to access the league's insurance or the insurance that you've purchased on behalf of your club. And then there's a $5,000 per person accidental death and dismemberment benefit, which we hope that we never ever have to use again. So, but in the event that there is a fatality, there is that limited coverage there. So we've talked about the two coverages that are part of the core part of the league's insurance program. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how you go about purchasing the coverage. If you're a current insured, you are probably very familiar with the American Specialty Purchasing website, which also, as I said in the beginning, includes a lot of risk management materials for you to read, because I know you're really excited about reading risk management materials. You also can go online and schedule and pay your special event premium. So those are a couple of things that you'll find on the website. Again, and I mentioned this before, but the special event premium is based on the number of participants, and that premium is paid after your event. So you'll go online, you will say, I'm expecting 100 participants. Again, you will not include the number of existing members in your participation figures, and then that event will be registered online. You'll be able to issue certificates of insurance for that event, and then after the event, you'll go online and pay the appropriate premium. Coverage for your club begins at the time of payment, February 1st, 2019 or after, and then is in place through February 1st of 2020. There is a discount that's applied after August 2019 if for whatever reason you don't need to have coverage before then. I would encourage you, if you have a club and you're conducting any type of business, whether it's club rides or otherwise, that you consider the general liability coverage, because you can still, as an entity or an organization, be named in a lawsuit, even if you are just out there trying to raise awareness or advocating on behalf of your club. And then certificates of insurance, like I said, for special events can be secured online. So now I know everyone has been waiting for the program cost for 2019. We have just a couple of things that I wanted to go over. I had mentioned before the bicycle club, that premium is a per member charge. So for your annual coverage, The per member charge is, if you have 0 to 1,000 members, the charge is $4.75 per member, which is approximately 12 cents higher than expiring. So I think which ultimately comes out to about 3%. So we were really pleased based on loss history and current market conditions with that outcome. If you're a larger club that has somewhere between 1,001 to 2,000 members, your per member fee drops slightly to $4.25. And then if you have over 2,000 members, and again, you're a bicycle club, which means that you have 27 or more bike rides per year, then your premium drops to $3.75 per member. There is a minimum premium of $238 per club, which is fairly consistent with expiring, right around $7 higher. We often get the question on the how many club members. I don't know how many club members I'm going to have. What number should I choose? And we always encourage you to just use the number, the peak of your club activities. So if you do more rides and you have more membership in July, we just ask that you use your July estimate for there. It's a non-auditable policy, so we're not going to come back to you and say, hey, you actually had 4 additional members than you reported and you owe this amount of money. It's really more the honor system there. And then for advocacy organizations, which again, from an insurance perspective, means a club that has 26 or fewer club or social rides. If you don't have any rides whatsoever, other than special events, your premium is $150 annually. And that, again, is fairly consistent with expiring, just about $7 higher than expiring. The reason it is less expensive than those who conduct social rides or club rides is because if you indicate in your application that you do not have club rides, then you really don't have the need for the excess accident medical coverage that we talked about. So if you are a club that does offer 26 or fewer rides throughout the year, your annual premium, and again, you pay a flat premium, is $245, which again is just right at about consistent with expiring, just about $7 higher. So if you've been part of the club for insurance program for the last couple of years, you may have heard me say, man, it's not so great year from a loss perspective, or the market condition has changed. We would have loved to come in and say there's no change in premium, but based on where we've been the last couple of years as a result of losses, we're really, really pleased with being able to stay pretty close to flat there. So, there's a couple of optional coverages, like I had mentioned earlier, when you're going through the online insurance platform. You'll have the option to add coverage for a building that you rent or lease for your year-round office space. If you have that exposure, then there's an additional premium associated with that. And again, that only applies if you have that exposure, which ultimately, like I said, keeps the premiums down for everyone, so that you're not across the board paying for that exposure if you don't have it. We do offer, like I said, coverage for education courses. There is a break in premium if you use LCIs only as part of your education course. So there's two prices. One is classroom only, where you're not providing any on-bike instruction. You can see that if you provide the on-bike instruction, the premium goes up significantly, but that is purely a result of the exposure being different from sitting in a room or standing in a room, listening to and learning from a speaker compared to actually being out on the bike and getting that type of instruction. And then if you're not using LPIs as instructors, you'll see that the premium is slightly higher there. So always want to reward and encourage education courses led by LPIs whenever possible. Bicycle refurbishment, mountain biking, I think we've talked about both of those. And then we have the special event premium. And like I said, your league insurance program for your club or your advocacy organization is really designed to provide coverage for your annual operations, including your bike rides, your weekly bike rides, where a fee is not charged for that ride, and you will have registered based on the number of rides that you're having throughout the year. But we also know that there's events where there is a charge associated with the ride, whether it's a fundraiser or any other type of charge. And that's where that really is considered a special event under the insurance program. So special events are scheduled in advance of the actual activity, and premium is paid after the event is over. And so again, we have the bands of number of participants, and depending on the number of participants, your premium is determined that way. So 0 to 1,000, the premium per rider is $5.18. Now, the hope with breaking it down this way for you is if you're charging a fee for your special events, and you can hopefully, without a lot of trouble, add the additional $5 per rider or $5.18 per rider, with the idea that you can tell them, you have excess accident medical coverage, you have liability protection in the event that you are personally named in a lawsuit as a result of this ride. Those are some of the selling points, if you will, that we would encourage you to use as you are potentially increasing the cost of your special event. The minimum premium is $266. Again, the price, while it did go up about 3%, or 14 cents per rider, and that's just taking into consideration that first band, the 0 to 1,000 participants. And we have a note here, again, just indicating that you do not need to count the members that you've already paid for when reporting special events. Advocacy organizations, because it's not a membership-based premium that you initially pay, you do need to count your members who are participating in the club, the special event. Here is just a snapshot of the change in premium that I shared already. I think Kevin's going to make this presentation available so you can go back and look at that. So we're going to talk about a couple of other optional coverages. We are getting closer to getting through all of the coverages. It's always a risk talking about insurance at 8 o'clock Eastern time. I'm sure, possibly even if you are on Mountain Time, because you're probably thinking, man, I am done talking about insurance at 5 o'clock at night. But want to go through a couple of these, including the non-owned and hired automobile liability coverage. We have a number of clubs who purchase this coverage. Coverage is not available online, so you actually work directly with Renee or anyone else from our team to secure the coverage. Non-owned and hired automobile liability coverage is similar to general liability, but the trigger for coverage is not the bodily injury, property damage, or personal and advertising injury. The trigger is actually an automobile accident that results in the club or the driver, if it's it's a volunteer driver or an employee, being named in a lawsuit. Coverage applies to an insured club or anyone using, with the club's permission, the automobile that's being driven on behalf of the club. We generally put in place a $1 million limit, and like I said, it requires a separate application, and also verification of the club's driving policies, and is individually underwritten. So if a lot of times what triggers this coverage for clubs, it's a coverage that I would actually recommend for many clubs because, you might on a pretty regular basis have someone driving on your behalf to make bank deposits or potentially pick up supplies or hang up flyers. If you're not in an area where the individual can actually cycle to do those activities. But a lot of times the coverage will come into play because for a special event, they'll need a lead or a SAG vehicle to follow the riders. So if you're interested in non-owned and hired automobile liability coverage, again, it's not part of the core insurance program, but it's certainly available. Directors and officers liability coverage, we talked about how the directors and officers of your club are covered under the general liability policy, but only for bodily injury, property damage, and personal and advertising injury claims. We didn't talk about the directors and officers being or employees of the club being named in a lawsuit for any other type of wrongful act. An example of a wrongful act would be an allegation of discrimination or wrongful termination from the club. So let's say that you see or someone says, I'm really having trouble with Renee as a fellow member because of XYZ, and the club or the directors and officers of the club decide that Renee can no longer be a part of the club. And Renee then brings suit against the club and says, I'm discriminating against you because you're not allowing me to be a member because I'm a female. This is the policy that would come into play. And this coverage is actually available online on the insurance purchasing website, which we'll talk about in just a second. The limits that are available are generally $1 million or $2 million, and you have an option for either of those limits through the online insurance platform. Coverage is generally subject to a $500 deductible for directors and officers claims, so wrongful acts other than those employment practices type exposures, and then $1,000 for employment practices type exposures. So you might not have employees, but the example that I used with Renee bringing a discrimination claim against my club, that would be an employment practices type exposure. Like I said, coverage is available on the online insurance and insurance purchasing website. For this coverage, the coverage actually goes into effect the day that coverage is purchased, February 1st, 2019 or after, and is in place through February 1st, 2020. If you are currently insured through our organization for your directors and officers liability coverage, you have likely already received, and so many of you were quick to go ahead and renew that coverage, and so that's really good to make sure that you don't have a lapse in coverage. And then if you purchase coverage after February 1st, the insurance premium is prorated. The premium is assuming that you qualify for the online platform, which in most cases the clubs do. The premium is $550 for $1 million limit, plus a $25 purchasing group fee, or $850 for a $2 million limit, plus a $25 purchasing group fee. I always like to take the opportunity just to reiterate the coverage that's in place for our LCIs and seminar coaches, and that is the general liability coverage, that automatically provides coverage assuming that the individuals are instructing in compliance with the league's policies and procedures. Also applies during smart cycling seminars and classes, like I said, that are conducted in accordance with the league procedures. So we just want to make sure that when you're out there doing your education, that it's in compliance with what the league would recommend as being a certified league instructor. You don't have to do anything on our end to have coverage. As long as you can prove that you are a current LCI, then you have coverage. In the event that you have an entity or facility or anyone else who wants to see that you as an LCI has insurance coverage, you can reach out to us and we can provide proof of insurance. And here is our contact information. It looks very small, but please feel free to use it anytime. And with that, Kevin, I think we can open it up to questions.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Gina. That was great. One thing I wanted to add, everyone here is getting a recording of this webinar, so you can watch it anytime you'd like, or share with your board or riders, and we'll also have slides available for download. Now, we have a lot of good questions, and so I wanna go through them. If your question does not get answered, please don't take offense. We really can't get to all of them. Please reach out to Watterson directly here, and you'll see her contact information on the screen now, so you might make a note of it. Okay, first of all, many of you asked about gravel rides. Yes, are gravel rides covered? Non-paved streets, not trails.
Yeah, so I would not, yes, gravel rides are covered, and I would not consider gravel rides a mountain biking exposure. So if the only mountain bike type activity that you do is on gravel rides, there is not a need to say that you do mountain biking activities.
Great. Another one, many of our older riders are starting to ride e-bikes on club rides. Are they covered, or do we need to customize our coverage?
So, yes, e-bikes are considered under the insurance program. The idea is we're not wanting to cover, mopeds or other vehicles that don't require some type of pedaling to advance the bike.
Great. I believe that's referred to as Class 1 e-bikes. I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Moving forward, what about paid events for their club? Like a big, not necessarily charity, but like a non-member general public paid event.
Yeah, so when you say paid, I think, and I don't want to speak for the club here asking the question, but I think you mean like an entry fee. Entry fee events are completely acceptable. We consider those special events. So you would just need to schedule that event prior to the event date, include the estimated number of participants, not include your club members. Unless you're an advocacy organization, then you would include everyone. And then after the event, go in and pay your premium.
Great. Is there a form for first-time guest riders to sign?
The only thing that we recommend, it's not a requirement, is a release a liability waiver, and that can be found on the website, which we actually should have put on here. It is americanspecialty.com/LAB.
Perfect. Do you cover free public events like open streets or ciclovia as a special event?
I think there's a bad connection, Kevin.
Oh,
wait,
no.
I'm
Okay.
I'm really kidding. We're just thinking.
Okay.
Renee, we're having a sidebar here.
Oh, okay.
Renee, I'll let you take that one.
Yes, we have had a lot of questions about the open streets events, and we do cover those under the policy that are conducted and organized by the club. It would be general liability coverage to protect the club.
So there would not be excess accident medical coverage for the general public who come and participate.
Right. Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Great.
And I don't know what that second event was. You mentioned another event.
Yes, Ciclavia. It's another brand of open street style event.
Okay, that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
the same would be true there.
Yeah. If a club includes a membership in its special event, does any special reporting apply? I'm assuming this person means that there's all entrance fees include membership.
So in that case, I think what we're saying is that the club is having an event, a paid event, and as for paying to participate in that event, you then become a member for the, whatever period of time, 6 months or a year.
Correct.
In that particular case, if you have not already paid for your club insurance premium to contemplate that individual would need to be contemplated for your special event when you go in to schedule it.
Okay. All right. When talking about charity events, like special events, they can be single day or multi-day.
Correct.
Okay. Does the equipment coverage of $5,000, does that coverage cover damage to the bike in event of a crash or just theft?
It does not apply in the event of a crash. It has to be equipment that's in the care, custody, or control of the club itself. So if something happens to all 6 bikes that are, that the club member is responsible for overseeing while people go in for lunch, that could be considered, but it's not that I'm a member and I'm involved in a crash and then my bike is damaged and I need to have it repaired.
Okay. Some clarification on the phrase must start and finish together. So all rides must be no drop, is the question?
I felt like when I said that we might get a question and then I forgot to go back and clarify. So thank you to whoever asked that. What I was referring to as start and stop together is more that, hey, we're all meeting at 6 o'clock and we're going on this ride. This is the route we're taking. Not the, hey, we're, participating in the league's challenge and I'm riding at noon and Rochelle's riding at 3 and Nicole's riding at 7. So the idea is that it's an organized club ride. But we certainly understand that folks may drop out at different times throughout the ride.
Great. Is a release of liability required on each, in this case, mountain bike ride from every member rider every time? Or can one be used, say, for the full year?
Currently, the requirement is every ride, every member. That's something we can take back to, our partners from an insurance perspective, our underwriting partners, and see if they would waiver at all from that now that we've been involved, with the mountain biking for a couple of years. But as of today, it's every rider, every time.
Okay. Are you able to review existing insurance policies and liability waivers to determine if American Specialty can offer enhanced coverage or savings? Are you willing to review existing policies?
Sure. Yep,
Okay.
I would encourage you just to send those directly to me, Gina Doyle, and I'm happy to take a look at them and let you know, like, hey, it looks like the club's insurance program would help you here, or it looks like you have a good thing going, you might want to stick to it. So happy to look
Okay,
for
great.
those unique coverages.
Great, great. Yeah, we always get lots of questions about waivers. Here's one for waivers. Is paper version required, or can clubs use an online version? If paper, how long must clubs maintain copies? And someone else
Sure.
asked if preferred paper or digital.
I don't have a preference on paper or digital. I'll just tackle the paper question first. If you are using a paper waiver, I would recommend one, confirming with legal counsel if you have a lawyer on your club or on your board, but we always recommend keeping it for at least the statute of limitations in your state, which varies by state. With respect to the electronic waiver, the one thing that we would recommend, that highly recommend, and this is based on the fact that, and it wasn't within the league's insurance program, but one of our other clients where we were unable to produce a copy of the waivers, you want to make sure that the vendor you're working with is keeping a copy of that waiver and can reproduce it in the event that you need it to protect yourself in the event of a lawsuit. But both have been found, legally sound. So no preference, whatever is easiest for your club.
Okay. The walking component of coverage, would roadside trash pickup be covered under this walking component? This club does a lot of roadside trash pickup as part of club meetings. It's so great of them.
I think that it could potentially be considered I don't know. I want to say that it could be considered a club activity, without the walking component, but I need to look at the exact language in the policy. So that's an area. We'll have your contact information for that, and we'll make sure we circle back with you directly.
Great. I hear this from clubs quite a bit. If our club performs a bike valet service for an event to promote others to ride their bike in general, is that a covered activity?
Yes, that would be considered covered activity, and that actually might be an example of where the sports equipment liability would come into play. If those bikes were all in their care, custody, and control, and someone knocked over a bike, then that's possibly where that sports equipment liability would come into play. But yes, those are acceptable.
Great. This person is considering starting a cycling without age activity, which is great, where they give elderly individuals bike rides for free. Would this activity be covered? And this is usually, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but usually kind of looks like a pedicab, but is a free service.
Yeah, we've had also quite a few inquiries on that topic, and it's generally, I think we're able to get to a point where it can be considered under the policy. There's just that we have to work through the ins and outs of who's responsible for what. The challenge that we've run into, a lot of times the clubs that have reached out to us are partnering with a nursing home, for example, and we would like for the nursing home to take responsibility for the, health and safety of the elderly individual who's participating in the ride, and that's historically not been something the home or the group is willing to take on. So it's one that, while I think we can talk about it, it's not an easy fix under the insurance program.
Yeah. Okay. If this club has a social meeting at a restaurant and members purchase their own alcohol, is that a problem?
To me, that sounds like host liquor liability, because the club is not deriving an economical profit from the sale or serving of alcohol. Again, there's always a fine line there, but based on that very limited information that you shared, it sounds like close to me and therefore would not require additional coverage.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here.
Hey Kevin, I want to circle back because Renee is feverishly writing me notes here on the what is it?
Pedicab.
The cycling.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I want to be sure that I come across as saying that it's not something that's currently contemplated. We would have to look at it on a one-off basis. Like I said, I think we can talk about it and hopefully reach a resolution where we're transferring a lot of that exposure on behalf of the club back to the individual riding or the group who's organizing the ride. But it doesn't sound like it's an easy fix currently. So I think answered that a little bit both ways before, so I wanted to clarify.
Okay. Forgive me if I missed this. What is the per rider premium payment for a special event?
The per rider premium for a special event is based on the number of rides. It's $5.18 for the first 1,000 riders. And then for the second 1,000 riders, it's $4.07. And then for each rider in excess of 2,000, it drops down to $3.06 per rider.
Okay. I must have missed that. If you register as an advocacy organization with no club or social rides, will the excess accident liability insurance be available for special events?
Yes, for special events that are scheduled in advance, that premium includes both liability for those participants and excess accident medical.
Great. Just reviewing we've got time for just a couple more, and I'm reviewing what we have in the queue here. What is the maximum number of club rides for a cycling club?
If you register as a club, there's no maximum number of rides.
Right.
It's only if you register for an advocacy organization.
Okay. For non-owned hired auto, are club trailers included?
Yes, because you have to individually work through that from an underwriting perspective. We can make sure that that's contemplated. But again, that's not part of your standard coverage. It's something that has to be requested outside of the insurance purchasing website.
Great. Would ride leaders go under D&O coverage, or would that still be just club insurance coverage?
I'm sorry, what was that, Kevin?
I'm wondering if I'm reading this right. The question is, would ride leaders go under D&O coverage, or would that still be just club insurance coverage?
Yeah, it really depends on what claim is made against the ride leader. If there's an allegation that the ride leader took, made a decision that did not result in bodily injury, but resulted in some type of financial loss, that would fall under the directors and officers liability policy, because again, that directors and officers liability policy includes coverage for the entity as well as the club's volunteers or employees. And then if there's a lawsuit resulting from some type of bodily injury claim, it would be covered under the general liability. So again, the two coverages really cover the same individuals and the same entity, being the club, but it's for different types of exposures.
Great. And there's a request for a quote for additional GL coverage beyond $1 million. That might not be something you have handy.
Yep, it is. We can certainly do that. You have to reach out to Renee or anyone else on the team and the premium is really based on the number of rides that your club has. Is that right?
And the size of your club as well.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Explain the difference between automatic LCI coverage and the optional purchased education course coverage.
Sure. The automatic LCI coverage is for the LCI, him or herself. So if I'm an LCI and I'm named in a lawsuit because someone was injured during my education course and brings suit against me as an individual. So the automatic coverage is for the individual LCI. The education coverage that is part of the optional general liability purchasing option, if you will, is coverage for the entity itself and its volunteers.
Okay.
So that same example, maybe my club does not purchase the education coverage, but they still have me do something from an education perspective, and I'm an LCI and I'm named in a lawsuit. I, as an LCI, have coverage, but if my club, unless my club purchased the education coverage, the club itself would not have coverage.
Okay. I know I get this one from time to time. If a club member leaves a club-sponsored ride before reaching the end of the ride, example, to go home, and they have a crash and they're injured on their way home, are they covered by the club insurance?
I think it's really going to depend on how the claim comes in. I would say the intent, which is a word that we don't like to use in the insurance industry. We would rather have it be, in the insurance contract, is either covered or not. But I would say the intent is that that individual would not have the coverage unless he or she was part of the group ride. But depending on the circumstances, it's a possibility that the coverage would apply.
Okay. What about nonprofit bike shops or bike co-ops that sell donated refurbished bikes? Is that covered under general insurance?
There is an option to purchase refurbishment coverage under the general liability policy. So if you are receiving donated bikes and you're fixing them up and you're giving them away, or is it even if they're selling, Renee, the bikes?
Yes, I believe so.
Or selling the bikes, then and you've purchased the bike refurbishment coverage, the general liability policy would apply.
Okay. If a club has 200 members, but events typically attract no more than 75, for example, do they pay for 200 members or for 75?
Well, if they would pay for, out of the 75, they would pay for the number that are not already a member of the club.
Okay. If one train leaves St. Louis at 7 p.m. and another train leaves Washington, D.C. at 8:05, just kidding. You were doing so good. I didn't want to. I had to throw in a curveball. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks to all of our club leaders and advocacy organization leaders. There are a bunch of questions that we didn't get to. So please reach out to Renee. Her address is on your screen. The purchasing website, I believe that will be available tomorrow, yes?
Yes. So that website will go live tomorrow. And if you are currently insured through the League's insurance program and through American Specialty, you'll receive an email with instructions to go ahead and move forward with purchasing coverage. If you've already purchased directors and officers liability coverage, you still need to purchase the general liability coverage because that part it will go live tomorrow. But yes, everything will be up and running and ready to go tomorrow.
Great. And as a reminder, we have a survey that is on its way to you. Yeah, the League is always looking for ways that we can help support bike clubs. It asks you for concrete ideas, and I'd love to hear it. You can, again, renew your League membership anytime, bikeleague.org/renew. And again, I'm Kevin Deckinga with the League, simply kevin@bikeleague.org. With that, thank you so much. Have a great evening. Thank you, Gina and Renee and Nicole and Rochelle. Yeah, this was great. And a recording of this will be posted on the League's website, certainly by the end of the week under the membership and bike club section.
Very good. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.